In a crowded martial arts gym where every belt color demanded respect, one man was invisible. He wasn't a student, not a coach, just a janitor mopping sweat off the mats. But that day, the silence of his unnoticed presence shattered. A cocky, black belt instructor smirking in front of his students called him out, not to thank him but to mock him. "Why don't you spar with me for fun?" Laughter rippled through the room. Cameras were pulled out. Nobody expected the janitor to last a second. But what unfolded next would silence the mockery, turn shame into shock, and expose a truth no one saw coming. The National Martial Arts Gym in Las Vegas was a place of pride and discipline. Bright mats stretched across the floor, flags of different nations hung proudly on the walls, and students of all ages trained hard, sweating and striving for perfection. The air was filled with the sharp sounds of punches and kicks, mixed with the firm instructions of the black belt masters. Among them was Daniel, a respected senior instructor, tall, muscular, and confident. He had earned his black belt years ago and carried it with the kind of arrogance that demanded attention. Students admired him, parents trusted him, and newcomers feared his sharp tongue. But in the background, almost invisible, worked Michael, a quiet black janitor. He was in his 40s, humble and dedicated to keeping the gym spotless. Day after day he swept the mats, emptied the trash, and fixed broken lockers. He was always polite, always respectful, and never interfered with the classes. To many, he was just the janitor, someone they barely noticed as they walked past. Yet, there was something about Michael. His steady posture, the calm way he moved, and the quiet strength in his eyes. Most ignored it. Daniel, however, saw it as an easy target. In his eyes, Michael was just a man of lesser status, someone who didn't belong on the mat. On that fateful afternoon, as students lined up in their crisp uniforms, Daniel's smirk widened. He had spotted Michael sweeping the edges of the mat, and in front of everyone he decided to turn him into a spectacle. The challenge began with a mocking tone. Daniel, standing tall in the center of the mat, clapped his hands to grab everyone's attention. The students, their parents, and even visiting spectators turned toward him as his voice echoed across the gym. "Hey, Michael," Daniel sneered, gesturing toward the janitor. "Why don't you put down that broom and show us what you've got? Let's have a little spar, just for fun." The words, laced with sarcasm, instantly drew chuckles from a few students. Others looked uneasy, shifting in their places, but none dared to question a respected black belt instructor. Michael paused, leaning lightly on the broom handle. His calm eyes scanned the room. Dozens of faces staring at him, some amused, some expectant, and some already looking away as though the outcome was inevitable. After all, what could a janitor possibly do against a trained fighter? He gave a polite smile, shaking his head as if to dismiss the provocation. But Daniel was not going to let him off that easily. "What's the matter? Scared?" Daniel taunted, his voice louder this time. "Or maybe you're worried your uniform isn't clean enough." The laughter grew louder. Even some parents chuckled uncomfortably, while others frowned at the cruelty of the moment. Michael simply placed the broom against the wall, his movements unhurried, deliberate. "Fine," he said softly, his voice calm but firm. "If that's what you want." The room seemed to shift. A strange stillness spread across the gym as Michael stepped onto the mat. Students leaned forward, sensing something different in the air, though they couldn't quite name it. Daniel smirked, already envisioning how he would humiliate the janitor in front of everyone, how this little match would further cement his dominance. The sparring began. Daniel charged forward with a confident stance, throwing a sharp jab toward Michael's chest. To everyone's surprise, Michael moved with lightning speed, his body shifting gracefully to the side, avoiding the strike without effort. The crowd gasped. Daniel tried again, faster, more aggressive. A roundhouse kick whipped through the air, powerful enough to knock an average man to the ground. But Michael blocked it with calm precision, his arm absorbing the impact without flinching. Murmurs spread across the room. Parents exchanged puzzled glances, students widened their eyes, and Daniel's smirk began to fade. Michael wasn't fighting back. He wasn't even showing aggression. He was simply defending, each movement efficient, controlled, and almost too smooth to be accidental. "Come on," Daniel shouted, frustrated, throwing another flurry of punches. But every single one missed its mark. Michael's feet glided across the mat, his posture balanced, his breathing steady. It was becoming clear. This was no ordinary janitor. A whisper spread among the students. "He knows martial arts." One of the older parents leaned closer to another and muttered, "That man, he's trained. I've seen fighters like this before." But Daniel couldn't stop now. His pride was at stake. Sweat poured down his forehead as he pushed harder, spinning, striking, doing everything to land even a single clean hit. Michael, however, remained composed, like a seasoned master studying a reckless student. Minutes passed, and the crowd's laughter had turned into stunned silence. Every blocked strike, every sidestep, every effortless evasion painted a new picture of Michael, not as a janitor, but as a man of immense skill and quiet power. And yet, Michael still hadn't struck back. He had not humiliated Daniel, had not hurt him. He had only revealed enough to make everyone question what they thought they knew. The power dynamic of the room shifted. For years, Daniel had commanded respect through his belt and his loud voice. But in this single spar, with the janitor's silent skill, that illusion began to crumble. What no one knew, at least not yet, was that Michael's story stretched far beyond this gym. His life, his training, and the sacrifices he had endured would soon become clear. And the truth would not only humble Daniel, but change the way everyone in that room looked at respect, strength, and dignity. The gym was silent now, except for the sound of Daniel's heavy breathing and the faint squeak of bare feet on the polished mat. The once laughing crowd sat frozen, their eyes darting between the proud black belt and the man they had dismissed as nothing more than a janitor. Daniel's smirk had long vanished. His face was red with effort, his arms trembling as he tried to summon the strength for one last desperate strike. He lunged forward with everything he had, unleashing a spinning back kick designed to end fights in seconds. The air sliced sharply with the force of his movement. This was the kind of kick that could break ribs. But then it happened. Michael stepped forward, closing the distance in an instant, his hand moving with astonishing precision. In one smooth motion, he caught Daniel mid-kick, guiding his leg harmlessly past his own body, and with the gentlest of touches placed Daniel flat on the mat. No aggression, no violence, just pure control. The crowd gasped. Mothers covered their mouths in shock. Students leaned forward with wide eyes, and even the assistant instructors stood speechless. Daniel lay on the ground, stunned, staring up at Michael with disbelief. How could someone so invisible, so overlooked, move with such mastery? But Michael didn't gloat. He didn't mock or humiliate. Instead, he stepped back, offering Daniel his hand. For a long, tense moment, Daniel hesitated. His pride battled against the weight of humiliation. But as silence pressed down on the room, he finally reached up and accepted the hand. Michael pulled him to his feet, steady and calm, his eyes never showing anger, only quiet dignity. And in that moment, the truth was undeniable. This man wasn't just a janitor. He was a fighter, a master, a teacher in his own right. His humility had hidden his strength, but now, exposed before everyone, it carried more weight than any black belt tied around a waist. The whispers started again, this time in awe, not mockery. "He's incredible. Where did he learn that? All this time, and no one knew." Daniel, still breathing heavily, lowered his head, not just from exhaustion but from shame. For years he had used his skill to boast, to dominate, to elevate himself above others. But now, faced with Michael's quiet strength, he realized the belt around his waist meant nothing compared to the discipline and respect embodied by the man he had mocked. And in that moment, everyone else realized it too. What happened on that mat wasn't just a sparring session. It was the shattering of prejudice, the collapse of stereotypes, and the revelation that greatness often hides in the most unexpected places. As Daniel stood there humbled and quiet, the crowd began to applaud. It wasn't the shallow clapping of entertainment. It was the deep, respectful applause that comes when people witness something life-changing. The sound echoed off the walls of the gym, filling the room with a kind of reverence no tournament trophy could ever command. Michael simply bowed, his movement slow and deliberate, the same way he might sweep a hallway after the students left. There was no pride in his posture, no sign of victory, only calm acceptance, as though this moment had always been inevitable. For the first time, people truly saw him, not as a janitor sweeping up sweat-stained mats, but as a man of discipline, patience, and unshakable character. Parents who had once looked past him began to whisper to their children, telling them to remember what they had just seen. Students who had laughed earlier now stared at him with wide-eyed respect, realizing that strength was not about the color of a belt or the color of a man's skin. Daniel, still shaken, lowered his gaze. In that silence, he confronted his own arrogance. For years, he had believed his belt defined him. He had thought his worth was measured in victories, in praise, in the ability to show dominance over others. But Michael had revealed something far greater. True mastery lies not in force but in humility, self-control, and respect. Later that evening, as the gym slowly emptied, one of the youngest students walked up to Michael. She couldn't have been older than 8. With her small hands clasped tightly, she whispered, "Can you teach me?" Her voice was trembling, but her eyes carried something powerful: hope. Michael bent down, smiled warmly, and nodded. And in that single moment, the future shifted. Because this wasn't just about a sparring match. It was about breaking barriers, shattering stereotypes, and proving that greatness is not always recognized at first glance. Sometimes, the most extraordinary people are hidden in plain sight, quietly enduring, quietly strong. The lesson of that day spread far beyond the walls of the dojo. Parents spoke of it at dinner tables. Students shared it with friends. Even Daniel carried it with him. His pride softened, his outlook forever changed, and the story of the janitor who humbled a black belt became more than an unforgettable event. It became a symbol of resilience, a symbol of dignity, a symbol of what happens when judgment gives way to truth. So now the question lingers for all of us. How many times have we overlooked someone's worth simply because of what they appeared to be on the outside? How many Michaels have we dismissed in our own lives? Perhaps the real challenge isn't learning how to fight. Perhaps the real challenge is learning how to see.